Beneath the sands of Iran lie secrets that could rewrite ancient history. The Persian Empire once ruled over nearly half the world's population, a colossal force of unimaginable wealth and power. Yet its greatest stories are not found in its victories, but in its enduring mysteries. This is a journey into the heart of its deepest enigmas, where we will uncover 25 of its most perplexing unsolved puzzles. You will discover the true fate of a 50,000-strong army that vanished without a trace and decode the hidden purpose behind a king's cryptic declaration. We stand before the silent ruins and unreadable texts, asking the same questions that have haunted historians for centuries. What does a civilization leave behind when its greatest treasures are not gold but questions? Our first great puzzle begins with the founder himself, Cyrus the Great, and the unsettling question of where he truly lies. At the ancient site of Pasargadae, a solitary, austere stone structure stands against the sky, traditionally honored as his tomb. It is a profoundly simple monument for such a monumental figure, a man who forged an empire, yet from the very beginning whispers and ancient texts have cast doubt. Historians like Arrian recorded that Cyrus was not originally buried here, but that his body was moved to this spot for its protection, a fact that immediately cracks open the door to mystery. If his body was moved once, could it have been moved again? Was this simple house of stone always meant to be a decoy, a noble facade to protect the king's true remains from the desecration he so feared? The tomb itself offers no answers carved in stone. There are no grand declarations, no royal inscriptions confirming the identity of its occupant, a stark contrast to the later, boastful tombs of other Persian kings. This silence is deafening. For centuries, this has fueled a fierce debate. Does that quiet chamber in Pasargadae truly hold the great conqueror, or are we paying homage to an empty shrine? Modern archaeology has sent ground-penetrating radar and eager teams to seek the truth. Yet the earth has yielded no definitive proof, no hidden chamber that settles the argument once and for all. The founder of the Persian Empire rests somewhere, but his ultimate silence remains one of his most enduring legacies. Even the tomb of Cyrus pales before the legend of his most dedicated protectors. The Persian Empire's true power was guarded by an elite corps of 10,000 soldiers known as the Immortals. Their name came from a chilling and brilliant piece of psychological warfare. Their ranks were never allowed to diminish. Whenever a soldier fell in battle or from illness, he was instantly replaced by a new, equally skilled warrior. To any enemy watching, the unit appeared invincible and eternal, a seemingly endless stream of professional soldiers that could never be defeated, only endured. They were the emperor's personal guard, the core of his army, and a symbol of imperial might that stretched from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of India. Herodotus described their magnificent appearance, their robes glittering with gold, their spears always at the ready. They were the constant, unshakable pillar of the empire. And then the pillar crumbled. When Alexander the Great toppled the Achaemenid dynasty, the historical record for the Immortals simply stops. They march off the pages of history and into the fog of legend, leaving behind a void of evidence. What became of these 10,000 men? One theory suggests they were not annihilated but absorbed. As the old empire shattered, its finest soldiers would have been a valuable prize. Perhaps they were integrated into the armies of Alexander's successors, their unique identity slowly dissolving into the ranks of new masters. Another, darker possibility is that they fought to the last man in a final, desperate stand to protect their king, their complete destruction explaining their total disappearance from all records. Or did they simply lay down their arms and melt away into the vastness of the empire they once served, choosing to vanish rather than serve a new ruler? The most frustrating part of this mystery is the utter lack of proof. No mass grave has been found that can be linked to them. No definitive inscription lists their disbandment. Their magnificent armor and weapons, so vividly described, have never been uncovered in an archaeological context that bears their name. They were the eternal guardians, and their greatest secret was not how they lived, but how they vanished without a trace. Moving from vanished armies to a tangible object, we find the Cyrus Cylinder, a small clay artifact that has sparked one of history's grandest debates. Often celebrated as the first charter of human rights, this ancient document records the Persian king's conquest of Babylon and his subsequent policies. It proclaims his tolerance, his restoration of various gods to their temples, and his permission for displaced peoples like the Jews exiled in Babylon to return to their homelands. On its surface, it is a remarkable declaration of mercy and multicultural understanding from the ancient world. But was this a genuine expression of a new political ideology or something far more calculated? Many historians argue this was a masterstroke of propaganda. Cyrus had just seized a vast and powerful empire. By presenting himself not as a brutal conqueror but as a liberator and a restorer of traditional order, he effectively disarmed potential rebellion. He used the cylinder, written in the local Akkadian language and following Mesopotamian traditions, to legitimize his rule in the eyes of the Babylonian elite. It was a brilliant public relations move designed to secure his new territory with minimal bloodshed. Others, however, point to a different context. They see it not as a unique proclamation of rights, but as a fairly standard foundation text, similar to those laid by earlier Mesopotamian kings. In this view, the cylinder was primarily a religious document, justifying his rule by highlighting his piety and his favor with the god Marduk, meant to be buried in the foundations of a building to commemorate its construction. Its contents, while progressive to our eyes, may have been traditional royal boasts. So which is it? Was Cyrus a revolutionary thinker or a pragmatic ruler using the tools of his time to consolidate power? The cylinder itself does not answer this. Its true purpose is locked within the intentions of a king long turned to dust, leaving us to wonder if we are witnessing the birth of a noble ideal or simply the most effective propaganda ever written. But if propaganda and vanished armies are the empire's ghosts, its true lifeblood was a marvel of engineering so grand it would not be matched for centuries. The royal road stretched an astonishing 1,500 miles from the opulent palace at Susa all the way to the coastal city of Sardis. Herodotus immortalized this highway, writing with awe that royal couriers could traverse its entire length in just 7 days, a journey that would take an ordinary traveler 3 months. This was the internet of the ancient world, a physical network that bound the empire's distant provinces together with unprecedented speed. Messengers on horseback raced along its path, carrying the king's decrees and military intelligence, while trade caravans lumbered beside them, bringing spices, silks, and treasures from every corner of the known world. The road was the central nervous system of Persian power, allowing a king in his capital to command armies and collect taxes from territories thousands of miles away. Yet for all its historical fame, the royal road has largely evaporated from the modern landscape. The grand mystery is not its existence, but its precise footprint on the earth. Herodotus gave us the endpoints, Susa to Sardis, but the twisting, turning path it took between them is a colossal puzzle. Where exactly did this ancient superhighway run across the rugged terrain of modern Turkey and Iran? Archaeologists have been searching for decades, scouring satellite imagery and walking the ground, hoping to find the telltale signs. They look for the subtle remnants of a raised roadbed, the faint ruts left by countless cartwheels, or the scattered foundations of the way stations that Herodotus described. These stations were the key to the courier's incredible speed, offering fresh horses, food, and shelter at regular intervals, yet the locations of most remain completely unknown. Vast stretches of the proposed route are pure guesswork, leaving us to wonder how the road navigated specific mountain passes or crossed particular rivers. How did the Persian engineers accomplish such a feat of logistics and construction? Without knowing its exact path, we cannot fully understand the practical genius required to maintain and patrol such a vast infrastructure. The Royal Road was the empire's greatest physical achievement, and yet today, its most basic outline is one of its most enduring secrets. While the Royal Road connected the empire, a deeper form of communication remained locked away in plain sight. Scattered across ancient sites are inscriptions in a script known as Linear Elamite, one of the oldest undeciphered writing systems in the world. This was not the cuneiform of the later Persian kings, but a separate, streamlined script used by the Elamite kingdom and into the very early days of the Achaemenid Empire. We have the physical artifacts, the clay tablets and stone monuments bearing its sharp, linear signs, but the language they record is a ghost. The script itself is only partially understood, and the underlying Elamite language and its complex grammar remain a profound mystery. This is not a simple code waiting for a key, it is an entire lost world of thought. The challenge for scholars is immense. The corpus of known texts is tragically small, perhaps only around 40 in total, offering very little material for comparison and analysis. Without a long bilingual text, something like the Rosetta Stone that pairs linear Elamite with a known language, every step forward is a painstaking guess. How do you begin to understand a language when you have no dictionary, no grammar book, and only a handful of fragmented sentences to work with? Each attempt at translation feels like trying to reconstruct a symphony from a few scattered notes. The potential secrets trapped within these silent marks are staggering. If we could finally read them, what would they tell us? They could reveal the inner workings of the early Persian administration, the economic records and royal decrees that managed a budding empire. They might hold the keys to Elamite religious beliefs, detailing rituals and gods that preceded Zoroastrianism and influenced later Persian culture. These texts could be the missing link, explaining the transition from the older Elamite civilization to the new Persian power, a political and cultural handover that shaped the ancient world. Every unread line is a closed door, and behind it could be answers to questions we have not even learned to ask. A king's own words can be the greatest mystery of all. High on a wall at Persepolis, carved in 3 different languages for all the world to see, stands the Deva inscription of King Xerxes I. In it, the powerful son of Darius boasts of his accomplishments, but one passage stands out starkly. He declares that he crushed a rebellion in a land where, as he puts it, devas were worshipped. He then states that he ended this deva worship and established the proper rites for the god Ahura Mazda. On the surface, it is a story of royal piety and triumph. Yet this single, vague statement has ignited a firestorm of debate that has burned for over a century. The entire mystery hinges on one simple, unanswerable question. What and where was this land of the Devas? The term itself is deeply ambiguous. In the Zoroastrian tradition Xerxes followed, Devas could mean false gods, demons, or deities of an opposing, older faith. So was this a theological crusade, a holy war against unbelievers? Or was it merely political language, a way to smear his enemies as evil and legitimize his brutal suppression of a restive province? The inscription offers no map, no names, no clear context. It is a riddle wrapped in royal propaganda. Scholars have proposed 2 primary suspects, each with compelling evidence. One theory points directly at Babylon. We know Babylon rebelled against Xerxes early in his reign, and his response was famously harsh. He destroyed temples and reportedly melted down a giant solid gold statue of the god Marduk. To the Babylonians, this was an act of sacrilege, but in Xerxes' own Zoroastrian worldview, Marduk could easily have been classified as a deva. The other major candidate is Egypt, another province that chafed under Persian rule and staged repeated revolts. The Egyptian pantheon, with its animal-headed gods, might have been seen by the Persians as a form of idolatry, the worship of false devas. Yet without a specific mention in the text, we are left guessing. This is the core of the puzzle. The inscription is just clear enough to announce a major event, but just vague enough to hide its true nature forever. Was Xerxes documenting a profound religious reformation, an attempt to standardize the worship of Ahura Mazda across his entire empire? Or was he simply using the language of faith to justify a ruthless act of political punishment, a warning to any other province considering revolt? The stone wall at Persepolis holds its secret tightly. We can read the king's words, but we may never truly understand the blood and belief behind them. The same stone walls that bear the words of Xerxes also hold a deeper silence, one that speaks to the very soul of the empire. Zoroastrianism was the spiritual bedrock of Persian power, a faith centered on the sacred elements, with fire as its ultimate symbol of divine truth and purity. We know this religion defined the worldview of the kings, yet the physical spaces where they practiced their most sacred rituals have vanished from history. For an empire that left behind such magnificent palaces and tombs, the absence of its primary places of worship is a glaring and perplexing void. The great debate centers on a simple but profound question. Where did the kings commune with their god, Ahura Mazda? Did they worship at open-air altars under the vast sky or within enclosed temple-like structures? Later periods of Persian history give us clear examples of enclosed fire temples, buildings designed to house an eternal flame. But from the Achaemenid era itself, the epoch of Cyrus and Darius and Xerxes, no such building has been definitively identified. Some scholars argue powerfully for the open-air model. They point to the vast, elevated platforms at sites like Pasargadae and Naqsh-e-Rustam. These could have been sacred precincts where fires burned on simple stone altars, their flames visible for miles, a public declaration of faith under the open heavens. This would align with the Zoroastrian reverence for natural elements, making the entire sky a cathedral. Yet others counter that a king of such immense wealth and power would have surely built a grand, enclosed sanctuary to protect his most holy flame. So where is it? If such a temple existed at the heart of Persepolis, why have we not found its foundations? The silence of the ruins is deafening. Perhaps the answer is that these early temples were not the distinct, specialized buildings we imagine. Maybe the royal palace itself was the temple, with a sacred fire housed in a specific room, its architecture so seamlessly integrated into the royal complex that it is archaeologically invisible to us today. Or perhaps the true fire altars were simple, portable metal affairs, carried on military campaigns and placed in temporary settings, leaving no permanent trace on the landscape. This is more than an architectural mystery. It is a spiritual one. Without knowing the form of their temples, we cannot fully grasp the experience of their worship. We are left wondering about the scent of the sacred sandalwood burning, the sight of the Magi priests chanting before the flames, and the king himself, the shadow of Ahura Mazda on earth, kneeling in a space we can no longer see. The empire's primary dialogue with its god has been lost, leaving only the echo of a prayer we can no longer hear. Even the gods themselves seem to turn against the Persian king Cambyses II. In the year 529 before the Common Era, according to the Greek historian Herodotus, a catastrophe unfolded in the vastness of the Egyptian desert. Cambyses, the son of Cyrus the Great, had dispatched a massive force of 50,000 soldiers from the city of Thebes. Their mission was to march across the sands to the legendary oracle of Ammon at Siwa Oasis to legitimize his conquest of Egypt. But they never arrived. Herodotus tells us that after days of arduous travel, a monstrous sandstorm rose from the south, a boiling, suffocating wall of wind and sand that engulfed the entire army. When the sky finally cleared, there was nothing left. 50,000 men, along with all their weapons, supplies, and animals, had been wiped from the face of the earth as if they had never existed. The story has all the elements of an epic myth, a divine punishment for a king's arrogance. But how much of it can we believe? Herodotus was a storyteller, and his account is our only detailed source, written decades after the fact. He is famous for blending fact with folklore, and this tale of a supernatural disaster is precisely the kind of narrative that raises eyebrows among modern historians. Could a single storm truly annihilate such a colossal force without leaving a single trace? The sheer scale of the loss defies easy belief. This has not stopped the search. For over a century, explorers and archaeologists have been drawn to the desolate stretches of the Western Desert, hoping to solve this greatest of all ancient disappearances. They have scoured the dunes on camelback and studied satellite images from orbit, looking for any sign. A single spear tip, a fragment of a Persian tunic, or a single bone would be a world-changing discovery. Yet the desert has given up nothing. Not one piece of definitive evidence has been found to mark the passage of 50,000 souls. This utter lack of physical proof has fueled alternative theories. Perhaps Herodotus' sandstorm was a metaphor for a more mundane, yet equally deadly, disaster. Could the army have simply gotten lost? The desert is a merciless navigator, and a wrong turn could have led them into a waterless wasteland where thirst and exposure claimed every life. Another possibility is that they fell not to nature but to a human enemy. The Egyptian tribes of the desert were fierce and independent, and they may have launched a series of devastating guerrilla attacks, wiping out the disoriented column. Disease is another silent killer that could have ravaged the close-packed ranks, leaving a ghost army to be buried by the shifting sands. The most haunting question is not what happened, but why we cannot find them. 50,000 men is not a small patrol, it is a city on the march. Their remains, their equipment, their very footprint on the earth should have left an indelible mark. The complete absence of any artifact suggests that either the story is a grand exaggeration, or the desert has hidden its secret with a perfection that mocks our modern technology. We are left with a historical ghost story, a whisper on the wind about a king's army that marched into a golden haze and simply ceased to be. High on the sheer face of a mountain in western Iran, a king's voice echoes across millennia. The Behistun Inscription is a colossal billboard carved for the gods and for eternity. Cyrus the Great, having secured his contested throne, commissioned this masterpiece around 515 BC. It is a trilingual proclamation in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, a text so vast and vital that it became the Rosetta Stone of the ancient Near East, allowing scholars to finally crack the code of cuneiform writing. But the message it contains is rivaled by the mystery of its very existence. How did human hands over 2,500 years ago manage to create this on a precipice over 300 feet from the ground? The logistical nightmare of its construction is a puzzle that still captivates engineers. The rock face is not a gentle slope but a sheer, intimidating cliff. There was no natural platform for workers to stand on, no easy path to haul up tons of equipment, food, and water. So how did they even get up there? The most plausible theory involves an incredibly daring and complex system of ropes and scaffolding. Artisans would have had to be lowered from the top of the mountain on ropes made of woven leather or plant fibers, dangling precariously as they swung against the rock to carve the first rough outlines. But ropes alone could not support the sustained, heavy work of hammering and chiseling the final, intricate text. They would have needed a substantial wooden platform, a temporary ledge built out from the cliff face to hold teams of workers and their tools. Imagine the process of building that scaffold. Each timber would have had to be hoisted from the base of the mountain, a grueling effort requiring pulleys and immense manpower. How did they secure the framework to the smooth limestone without leaving permanent holes that would mar the finished inscription? They might have used ingenious, removable anchors, or perhaps they pegged the structure into natural fissures in the rock that were later filled and smoothed over, leaving no trace of their presence. The tools themselves were simple yet brutally effective. Bronze, or more likely hardened iron chisels and heavy stone hammers were the primary instruments. A master carver would have held the chisel steady while teams of laborers took turns striking it with precise, measured blows. Every one of the thousands of perfectly formed cuneiform wedges was punched into the stone this way, a testament to almost unimaginable patience and skill. One misstep, one poorly aimed strike could have ruined a character and forced a lengthy, difficult correction on the unforgiving rock. The entire project would have taken years, with workers enduring scorching summers and freezing winters on their vertiginous perch. What did they eat and where did they sleep? Did they have a permanent camp at the base, climbing up and down each day, or did they establish a temporary settlement on the mountain itself? The inscription gives us the words of a king, but it tells us nothing of the men who risked their lives to put them there. Their methods, their daily struggles, and their ingenious solutions have vanished into history, leaving behind only the breathtaking result of their labor, a silent monument to one of the ancient world's most audacious and unexplained engineering feats. The sheer audacity of the Behistun carvers pales before the legendary wealth they served. The Persian Empire was a titan of unimaginable riches, its treasury filled with gold and silver accumulated over 2 centuries from the tribute of countless conquered nations. This was the fabled Achaemenid hoard, a collection of wealth so vast it was said to be measured not in coins, but in tons of precious metal. When Alexander the Great finally stormed the ceremonial capital of Persepolis, ancient sources claim his soldiers found a treasure so magnificent it required 10,000 pairs of mules and 5,000 camels to carry it all away. It was the greatest plunder in ancient history, a prize that should have ended the story. But did it? The burning question that has tantalized historians and treasure hunters for 2,000 years is deceptively simple. Was that truly all of it? Ancient accounts, particularly from the Roman historian Curtius Rufus, suggest a more complex story. They whisper that as Alexander's army advanced like an unstoppable tide, the Persian high command had time to act. Facing the collapse of their world, would they have simply left the entire accumulated wealth of their empire sitting in one place, waiting for the conqueror? It seems an unthinkable strategic blunder. The legends say that a significant portion of the royal treasure, perhaps the most sacred and valuable items, was secretly moved. One persistent tale speaks of a colossal caravan leaving Persepolis under cover of darkness, heading for the remote, impregnable mountains of the empire's eastern reaches. The treasure, it is said, was hidden in a secret cavern or an abandoned mine, a cache so well concealed that its guardians took the secret to their graves. There are even hints in the historical record that support this idea. After the fall of Persepolis, Alexander continued to pursue the Persian king Darius III, and he was constantly short of funds for his massive army, despite the supposed mountains of gold he had just seized. This has led some scholars to wonder if the treasure at Persepolis was merely the operational fund, the petty cash of the empire, and that the true royal reserve had already vanished into the vastness of Asia. The potential hiding places are the stuff of dreams. Some point to the distant deserts of Central Asia, where forgotten citadels crumble under the sun. Others speculate it lies deep within the Alborz Mountains, north of the ancient capital, in a location known only to a sect of Zoroastrian priests. The allure of this lost hoard is irresistible. It is not just about the incalculable monetary value, but about the historical treasure trove it would represent. Imagine finding the original ceremonial robes of Cyrus the Great, the solid gold throne of Darius, or the sacred religious artifacts of early Zoroastrianism. Such a discovery would not just make someone rich, it would rewrite our understanding of Persian art, culture, and royal ceremony. This is why the search persists, a tantalizing ghost at the edge of history, a king's ransom in gold and silver that might still be waiting in the darkness for its discoverer. A king's death can unravel an empire in an instant. Following the strange and sudden demise of Cambyses II in 522 BCE, the Persian throne was seized by a man who claimed to be his brother Bardia, a prince most people believed was already dead. The classical sources, primarily the account carved into the mountain at Behistun by the next king, Darius I, tell a thrilling story of conspiracy. According to this official version, the real Bardia, also known as Smerdis, had been secretly murdered years earlier by his own brother Cambyses, who saw him as a rival. In the power vacuum that followed Cambyses' death, a sinister opportunist stepped in. He was a magus, a priest named Gaumata, who bore a striking resemblance to the murdered prince. Exploiting this likeness and the widespread confusion, Gaumata impersonated Bardia and claimed the crown, ruling for several months before he was exposed and killed by a group of 7 noble conspirators led by Darius. This is the story Darius wanted the world to believe, a clear narrative of a righteous king restoring order by overthrowing a fraudulent usurper. But how much of it is true? The mystery of the false Smerdis is not just about an impostor, it is about whether the official history itself is the real deception. The core of the puzzle lies in the character of the real Bardia. Was he really the victim of a fratricide, or was that a lie concocted by Cambyses or later by Darius to discredit him? Some modern historians propose a radical alternative. What if the man who took the throne was not an impostor at all? What if he was the genuine Bardia, the true brother of Cambyses, who had survived whatever plots were against him and legitimately claimed his birthright? In this version of events, the story of the murder and the evil magus Gaumata was nothing more than brilliant propaganda invented by Darius the Great. By painting the legitimate king as a fraudulent priest, Darius could justify his own violent coup and legitimize his own shaky claim to the throne. He needed a villain to play the role of the usurper so that he could be the hero who saved the empire. The evidence for this theory is compelling in its absence. Darius provides no proof of his claims on the Behistun Inscription, he simply states them as fact. He never explains how he knew Bardia was dead or how he confirmed the impostor's true identity as Gaumata. His entire justification rests on his own word, carved in stone for all eternity. If Bardia was indeed the rightful king, then Darius was not a liberator but a regicide, a man who murdered a legitimate ruler and then rewrote history to cover his tracks. The classical Greek historians like Herodotus were deeply suspicious, noting the convenient timing of the story and the fact that Darius gained the most from the entire affair. We are left with a 2,500-year-old political scandal. Was the false Smerdis a cunning priest who pulled off one of history's greatest deceptions, or was he a rightful king whose name and legacy were systematically destroyed by the victor? The stone at Behistun will never tell us anything but the winner's side of the story. While Darius carved his story into a mountain, another site nearby holds a puzzle in its very shape. At Naksh-e-Rustam, the final resting place of kings, a solitary, cube-shaped building stands apart from the grand rock-cut tombs. This is the Kaaba-i-Zartosht, a windowless tower of perfectly fitted limestone blocks that has stubbornly guarded its secret for 2,500 years. Its architecture is unique and strangely austere, a stark geometric form rising from the plain, with a single interior chamber accessible only by a steep staircase. Centuries after it was built, the Sasanian kings saw its power and covered its walls with their own inscriptions, claiming the ancient site for their own legacy. But their words do not explain the original purpose of the Achaemenid builders. What was this enigmatic cube meant to be? The most popular theory casts it as a Zoroastrian fire temple. Its design could have housed a sacred, eternal flame, protected within the stone walls from the desert winds, with a single doorway allowing the priests to tend the fire while keeping the holy element pure. Yet this explanation feels incomplete. Why build just one, and why here, in a necropolis, a city of the dead, would a primary fire altar be placed so close to tombs? Another compelling idea suggests it was a royal treasury, a secure vault for the most precious ritual objects used in the funerary ceremonies for the kings buried in the cliffs above. Its small size and difficult access would have made it ideal for safeguarding gold vessels, ceremonial robes, and sacred texts. But if it was a treasury, why is there no evidence of doors or locking mechanisms strong enough to protect such immense wealth? A third hypothesis proposes it was an archive, a kind of ancient library designed to hold clay tablets and royal records. The dry, sealed environment would have been perfect for preserving fragile documents. Yet no fragments of tablets, no shelving imprints, nothing of the kind has ever been found within its empty chamber. This utter void of evidence is the heart of the mystery. The cube offers no inscriptions, no carvings, no artifacts from its own time that point definitively to its function. It is a perfect blank slate. We are left with a beautifully crafted question in stone. Was it a place of prayer, a bank, a library, or something we have not even considered? A function lost to time because the knowledge was never written down. Each theory fits a piece of the puzzle, but the complete picture of what happened inside those silent, dark walls remains one of Persia's most tangible and frustrating enigmas. The foundations at Pasargadae tell a story of a city that has almost completely faded from view. We know the tomb of Cyrus, but the sprawling capital that surrounded it is now a ghost, reduced to rows of stone blocks lying flat on the sun-baked earth. These are the skeletal remains of palaces and pavilions that once defined the very first Persian royal complex, built by Cyrus himself. The scale is immense, yet the structures themselves are elusive. Archaeologists have painstakingly mapped the outlines of two main palaces, identified simply as Palace P and Palace S. Their floor plans are all that remain, a series of column bases and doorframe sockets that trace the shapes of vast audience halls and private residences. The most tantalizing clue lies in the sophisticated water channels crisscrossing the entire site. These are not mere ditches, but carefully engineered stone conduits, evidence of a sprawling paradise garden, a paradisa that wove through the heart of the city. This was the first Persian garden, a living symbol of the empire's power to create order and beauty in the wilderness. So why is this foundational city, the very birthplace of the empire, so poorly preserved compared to the later glory of Persepolis? The answer is a story of architectural evolution and political shift. Cyrus was building a new tradition, and his architects were experimenting, blending styles from the conquered lands of Lydia, Ionia, and Mesopotamia. The buildings at Pasargadae used a lot of mud brick on stone foundations, a material that erodes back into the earth with stunning speed once a roof collapses. When Darius I chose to build his magnificent new capital at Persepolis, Pasargadae was not destroyed, but it was largely abandoned as an active administrative center. It became a ceremonial backwater, a place of pilgrimage to the founder's tomb, but its palaces were no longer maintained. They were left to the wind and rain, their elegant walls of sun-dried brick melting away over the centuries, leaving only the stubborn stone footings behind. The true mystery is what these faint traces say about Cyrus's original vision. The ruins suggest an architecture of open spaces and graceful proportions, a stark contrast to the monumental, imposing reliefs at Persepolis. Was Cyrus's capital designed to be more inviting, a statement of inclusion for the diverse peoples of his new empire? Without the walls and the grand staircases covered in art, we are left guessing at the atmosphere of the very first Persian court. The grandeur of Pasargadae is a phantom, its true scale and splendor lost in the empty spaces between the stones. Stone steps rise toward a vanished palace, each tread carved with the silent parade of an empire. The Apadana staircase at Persepolis is a frozen pageant, a procession of stone ambassadors forever ascending to pay homage to the King of Kings. 23 delegations are meticulously depicted, each group identified by its unique gifts, clothing, and posture, a stone census of the known world. We recognize the Egyptians with their bulls and linen, the Armenians with their famous horses, and the Lydians bearing intricate vessels. Yet for all its detail, this gallery of nations holds stubborn secrets. The identities of several delegations remain fiercely debated by scholars, their stories blurred by time. Are the men carrying shields and spears representatives of the fierce Scythian nomads, or are they from another, lost province on the empire's edge? Is the group presenting a two-humped Bactrian camel from the Central Asian satrapy of Bactria, or from a neighboring region with similar customs? These are not just academic arguments. Each misidentified nation shifts our understanding of the empire's true reach and its diplomatic relationships. The deeper mystery, however, is why these specific processions were chosen for immortality in stone. Were they meant to document a single, spectacular New Year's festival, a real event where every subject nation came to present its annual tribute? Or are they an idealized vision, a piece of political theater designed to project an image of perfect, perpetual submission? The carvings show no moment of conflict or resistance, only orderly, willing homage. This was the empire's preferred story about itself, a narrative of harmonious diversity under one sovereign. But what if the reliefs hold a more complex, layered narrative? Some historians see clues in the arrangement and the specific goods being offered. Could the sequence of delegations tell a story of the empire's chronological expansion, with earlier conquests leading the way and newer additions following behind? Might the unique gifts from certain groups commemorate a specific historical treaty or a recent military victory that forced that nation into the fold? The staircase presents a unified, peaceful front, but the real stories behind those stone faces could be tales of rebellion quelled, alliances forged, or economies shattered to create this illusion of effortless tribute. The reliefs were the empire's grandest propaganda, but the unfinished story they tell is not of what they show, but of the raw power and complex negotiations required to make this stone fantasy a reality. The stone ambassadors of Persepolis ascended on dry land, but the Persian Empire's ambition did not stop at the water's edge. Ancient texts whisper of a landscape transformed by engineering genius, where the very waters of the Persian Gulf were bent to the will of its kings. Greek and Arab geographers wrote of a network of canals, dams, and mysterious underwater constructions that managed trade and controlled the flow of water across the region. These were not simple irrigation ditches, but massive public works projects that would have required thousands of laborers and brilliant hydrological knowledge. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder described intricate Persian canals linking rivers to create new trade routes, while medieval Arab scholars told of massive dams and barriers built to protect coastal cities from the sea's fury. The accounts are vivid and consistent, painting a picture of a civilization that mastered its environment with a skill that seems almost modern. Yet standing on those shores today, you see very little evidence of this aquatic empire. The mystery is not if these waterworks existed, but where they have gone. The vast gap between the rich textual descriptions and the sparse archaeological evidence is a chasm that historians are desperately trying to cross. Could it be that the most spectacular proofs of this engineering lie beneath the waves? Sea levels have fluctuated over the millennia, and the entire coastline has shifted. What was once a bustling port or the mouth of a grand canal could now be submerged under meters of water and silt. The potential for discovering submerged ruins in the Persian Gulf is immense, a hidden chapter of history waiting on the seafloor. These feats of engineering were the lifeblood of the empire, managing two precious resources, water and trade. A strategically placed canal could cut weeks off a trade route, bringing spices from India and silks from China faster to the heart of Persia. A massive dam could store water for a desert city, turning a barren coast into a fertile hub of activity. The Persians were not just building structures, they were building an economy and securing their dominance over one of the world's most vital waterways. Piecing together this puzzle requires a new kind of archaeology, one that uses satellite imagery to detect the ghostly outlines of ancient riverbeds and sonar to map the seafloor for the foundations of long-vanished ports. Each potential discovery raises more questions. How did they construct foundations underwater? What tools did they use to survey and plan such complex hydraulic systems? The answers are slowly being dredged up, fragment by fragment, from both the earth and the ancient texts, revealing an empire whose greatest strength may have been its ability to control the very element that defined its shores. Even the supreme god Ahura Mazda holds a profound and unresolved secret within his own divine nature. The Zoroastrian faith, which guided the Persian kings, presents a cosmic struggle between good and evil, light and darkness. At the very center of this drama stands Spentameniu, the bounteous spirit, the force of creation, wisdom, and all that is beneficial. Yet the precise identity of this spirit is one of the oldest theological puzzles. Was Spentameniu a distinct divine being, a separate entity created by Ahura Mazda to act in the world, or was this spirit merely an extension, a primary aspect of the god's own will and consciousness? The ancient texts themselves seem to offer conflicting answers. In some passages, Spentameniu appears as the direct opponent of Angrameniu, the destructive spirit of darkness and deceit. This framing suggests a duality, two primordial forces locked in an eternal battle, perhaps even as twin brothers born from the same divine source. Yet other sacred verses blur these lines completely, implying that Spentameniu is not a rival to Ahura Mazda, but is Ahura Mazda himself in his active, creative role. This is not a simple academic debate. It strikes at the very heart of what the ancient Persians believed about the universe. If Spentameniu is a separate being, then the cosmos is a true battlefield of independent powers. But if the bounteous spirit is fundamentally one with the supreme god, then the struggle against evil is an internal one, a process of divine thought and intention playing out across creation. This ambiguity likely reflects the religion's own long evolution over centuries. Early Zoroastrianism may have emphasized a more distinct separation between the two spirits, a clear dualism that helped explain the presence of suffering and evil in a world made by a good god. As the theology matured and was adopted by the imperial court, the idea of a single, all-powerful Ahura Mazda may have become more prominent, requiring Spentameniu to be folded back into the god's singular identity. We are left with a divine mystery that was perhaps never fully settled, even by the faithful themselves. How do you define the relationship between a god's essence and his active will? The question echoes through the silent ruins of the very fired temples where priests once chanted their prayers, a philosophical ghost that haunts our understanding of the Persian soul. The same divine questions surround a treasure that is both spectacular and utterly mysterious. On the dusty banks of the Oxus River in modern-day Tajikistan, a discovery in the late 19th century seemed to offer a direct window into Persian splendor. Local tribesmen, so the story goes, were digging by the riverbank when their tools struck metal. What they pulled from the earth was not a single artifact but an avalanche of gold, the collection we now call the Oxus treasure. This was not a formal archaeological dig. It was a chaotic, almost accidental unearthing that immediately clouded the treasure's true story. The initial finders had no understanding of its historical value, only its weight in gold. They began to break apart intricate pieces, selling fragments to any trader who passed through the region. Much of the treasure was likely melted down for bullion in the local bazaars, lost to history forever. What survives today, primarily in the British Museum, is a breathtaking but fragmented glimpse of Achaemenid craftsmanship. We see solid gold model chariots, delicate bracelets engraved with griffins, and rings set with precious stones, each piece a masterpiece. Yet this very beauty deepens the central riddle. Where did this immense wealth originally come from, and why was it left in the ground by the river? One compelling theory suggests this was the sacred treasury of a major Zoroastrian temple. The river Oxus was a significant boundary in the ancient world, a natural place for an important religious site. The treasure, filled with votive offerings like miniature chariots and figures, could have been accumulated over centuries from pious pilgrims and wealthy patrons. Its burial might then have been a desperate act of preservation. As Alexander the Great's armies swept through the region, the temple priests, facing certain plunder, could have hidden their most sacred objects, intending to return when the danger passed. They never did. Another idea posits that this was a royal tax shipment that met with disaster. The Oxus River was a vital trade artery. A barge carrying the annual tribute from a wealthy eastern satrapy back to the king could have been ambushed by bandits or sunk in a sudden storm. The merchants or officials in charge, rather than let the king's gold fall into enemy hands, might have hastily buried it on the riverbank, marking the spot in a way that was later forgotten. Or perhaps it was the private hoard of an incredibly wealthy merchant, hidden during a time of unrest and lost through his untimely death. The debate is fueled by the treasure's mixed composition. It contains items of clear religious significance alongside personal luxury goods and what appear to be raw materials for craftsmen. This very diversity makes it impossible to pin down a single origin. Was it a temple's collection of donated wealth, a tax collector's mixed bag of tribute, or a trader's sample kit of high-value goods? The chaotic circumstances of its discovery destroyed the context that could have answered these questions. The exact spot where it was found is uncertain, and the layers of earth that surrounded it, which could have told a story of date and purpose, were scattered by eager hands. We are left with a collection of unparalleled beauty that is also a profound historical ghost, a king's ransom in gold that no one came back for, waiting silently by a river for 1,500 years. Even the gold of the Oxus treasure cannot buy back the knowledge lost in a library of clay. At the heart of Persepolis, within the ruins of the great palace complex, archaeologists unearthed a different kind of treasure, one not made of gold but of baked earth. Thousands upon thousands of clay tablets were found, stacked in forgotten storerooms, a mountain of paperwork from the empire's bustling bureaucracy. These are the fortification and treasury tablets of Persepolis, and they hold the mundane, day-to-day heartbeat of the empire, written not in the king's grand old Persian, but in the practical, administrative language of Elamite. They record everything: the payment of silver to a traveling artisan, the issuance of wine rations for a royal celebration, the travel permits for a caravan crossing 3 provinces. This is the raw data of imperial management, a live feed from the desk of a Persian accountant. Yet for all we have translated, a staggering number of these tablets remain silent, their secrets locked away by time and damage. Many are broken into fragments, their stories shattered. Others are written in a cryptic shorthand, a kind of bureaucratic code used by clerks to save time, full of abbreviations and internal references that are utterly lost on us. Then there are the words themselves, the specific terminology for job titles, for types of taxes, for grades of flour and wine, that we simply do not understand. What exactly was the role of a capnush? What distinguished first quality barley from the regular allotment? These tiny details are the keys to reconstructing a lost economy. The monumental task of decipherment is like trying to complete a massive jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing and no picture on the box. Each translated tablet is a victory, but it also reveals how much we do not know. The potential locked in these unread lines is breathtaking. If we could fully understand them, we could track the price of goods across the empire over decades, watching inflation or scarcity play out in real time. We could map the travel routes of thousands of workers and officials, revealing the human highways that the royal road facilitated. We could finally understand the complex hierarchy of the imperial workforce, from the highest satrap to the lowliest stable hand, and see exactly how they were paid and fed. This would be a revolution, replacing our grand, top-down view of Persian kings and conquests with a granular, bottom-up understanding of how this colossal state actually functioned on a Tuesday afternoon. The true secret of the Persian Empire may not be in its lost gold, but in its lost ledgers waiting in shattered clay for the scholar who can finally make them speak. So much of the empire's history is recorded on clay, but its soul was captured in myth. A creature of immense wisdom and compassion soars through Persian legends, a being known as the Simurgh. This was no monster, but a colossal, radiant bird, often depicted with the head of a dog and the claws of a lion, whose vast wings could darken the sky. It was a benevolent protector, a purifying force, and a source of ancient knowledge, said to live for centuries and possess the cure for all ailments. The mystery is not just the creature itself, but the tangled roots of its origin, stretching back to the very dawn of Persian civilization. Where did such a complex and enduring idea come from? The search for its source leads us deep into the pre-Zoroastrian beliefs of the Iranian plateau, to a time when nature itself was imbued with divine spirits. Some scholars see the Simurgh as a direct descendant of the Avestan bird known as the Sina Marekha, a mighty eagle-like figure from the earliest Zoroastrian texts. This creature was already associated with healing and the spreading of seeds, a clear precursor to the later, more elaborate Simurgh. But the trail may go back even further, into the murky waters of Proto-Indo-European mythology, where a giant bird was a common archetype representing sovereignty and a connection to the heavens. One compelling theory suggests the legend began with a simple case of mistaken identity and exaggeration. Could travelers' tales of real, magnificent birds have blossomed into the myth? The Homer bird, a legendary creature itself often identified with the bearded vulture or the lemurgia, was said to bring fortune to those it cast its shadow upon. Or perhaps sightings of the massive golden eagle, with its awe-inspiring wingspan and power, were embellished over generations into the story of an immortal, magical being. Yet another, more profound idea posits that the Simurgh was never meant to represent a physical animal at all. Instead, it may have been a sophisticated cosmological symbol, a visual representation of the divine. Its composite nature, combining features of a bird, a dog, and a lion, could symbolize the unification of the sky, the earth, and the animal kingdom under one benevolent power. Its legendary home, a place high in the mountains where it nested in the tree of all seeds, paints a picture of a life-giving force at the center of the world. The Simurgh's most famous role in the Epic of Zal reveals its deepest symbolic layer. When the abandoned infant Zal, born with white hair, is found and raised by the Simurgh, the bird becomes a foster parent, teaching him wisdom and later giving him a single golden feather to summon its aid. This story transforms the Simurgh into a symbol of unexpected grace and redemption, a force that nurtures the outcast and restores order. Untangling this legend is to unravel the Persian soul itself, a quest to understand how a civilization used myth to explain its relationship with nature, divinity, and the very concept of benevolent power. The secret of the Simurgh is not whether it was real, but what its enduring flight tells us about the people who dreamed it into being. Royal hubris carved a path through a mountain. As Xerxes I prepared his colossal invasion of Greece, he faced a treacherous stretch of water off the Athos Peninsula, where years earlier a Persian fleet had been wrecked by a sudden storm. Determined that no natural obstacle would thwart his divine will, he commanded his engineers to do the impossible, to carve a canal straight through the solid earth of the isthmus. According to Herodotus, the project was completed in a matter of months, a staggering achievement that allowed his vast fleet to sail safely through the peninsula's base, bypassing the deadly capes entirely. Modern science confirms this was no myth. Core samples and geological surveys have revealed the distinct man-made trench, a clear scar across the landscape. The physical proof is there, but the how and the why remain fiercely debated. How could an ancient workforce with only bronze and iron tools move such an immense volume of earth and rock so quickly? Herodotus claims the labor was provided by the army itself, a force of hundreds of thousands working in shifts under the lash of overseers. This would have been a logistical nightmare, requiring food, water, and shelter for an army of laborers on top of the combat troops. The project's sheer scale suggests an almost unimaginable human cost. Was this a brilliant strategic move to protect his irreplaceable ships, or was it primarily a demonstration of power, a statement that the Persian king could literally reshape the geography of the world to suit his ambition? The canal was certainly a shortcut, but was it a necessary one? Many historians argue it was not. The Persian fleet was vast and experienced, well capable of navigating around Athos with proper planning. The decision to dig the canal, therefore, seems less like a tactical necessity and more like an act of monumental vanity. It was a message to the Greeks and to his own subjects, a declaration that Xerxes commanded not only men but nature itself. He was making the land itself bow to his authority. The true purpose of the Canal of Xerxes may lie somewhere between engineering and theater, a physical monument to a king's belief in his own limitless power. Yet for all its grandeur, the canal quickly silted up and was abandoned, its full story and the precise methods of its frantic construction still partially buried in the very soil its creator sought to conquer. An empire that vast could not be ruled by decrees alone. It required eyes and ears in every corner. The king's eye was the emperor's personal agent, a shadowy figure of immense authority who moved through the satrapies as the king's direct representative. Ancient sources like Herodotus describe this official, and later the king's ear as the sovereign's ultimate inspector, empowered to investigate corruption, listen for whispers of rebellion, and report back directly to the throne. These men were the central nervous system of imperial control, the human thread that connected the palace to its most distant provinces. Yet for all their described power, they remain phantoms in the historical record. We know the office existed, but we almost never learn the names of the individuals who held it. How did they operate with such effective secrecy? The heart of this mystery lies in a small, tangible object, the royal seal they must have carried. A clay impression bearing the mark of the king would have been their ultimate credential, granting them instant, unquestioned access to provincial treasuries, military garrisons, and private meetings with powerful governors. Such a seal was a physical piece of the king's own authority. Archaeologists have discovered thousands of clay seal impressions from the Persian era, many featuring powerful symbols like a royal hero in combat with a mythical beast. But which of these countless seals, if any, belonged specifically to the king's eye? We have no way to know. The seal was the key to their entire operation, yet we cannot pick it out from a lineup. This anonymity was almost certainly by design. Their power relied on their invisibility. A satrap in Egypt or a general in Bactria would never know if the next traveler at his gate was a simple merchant or the king's personal spy. This constant, low-grade paranoia was a brilliant tool of governance. It kept provincial governors in check, ensuring that even in a remote location, the king might be watching. But how did they deliver their reports? Did they travel with a small, trusted guard or alone and in disguise? Did they use the royal road's courier system, or did they have their own, more secret network of messengers? The methods of this ancient intelligence service are a complete blank. We are left with the ghost of an idea, a system of control so effective that its chief operatives successfully erased themselves from the very history they were documenting, their greatest secret being not what they saw but how they remained unseen. The silent tombs we know may only be a prelude to those still hidden from view. Deep in the jagged folds of the Zagros Mountains, the ancestral heartland of the Persian people, lies a secret that the earth has kept for millennia. This rugged landscape of steep valleys and inaccessible plateaus was the cradle of their power, the very ground from which the Achaemenid dynasty first rose. We have found the magnificent royal necropolises, the grand facades carved at Naksh-e-Rustam and Persepolis, but these are the tombs of a mature and public empire. What about its beginnings? The question that haunts archaeologists is a simple one. How many earlier, more secretive burial places of kings and chieftains remain undiscovered in these remote highlands? The Persian tradition of carving tombs directly into living rock was not just an architectural style. It was a statement of permanence, a way for a king to become part of the very land he ruled. The known tombs are masterpieces of engineering, their soaring crosses and intricate reliefs designed to be seen and revered. Yet for every one we have found, there could be another that was never meant to be found at all. The founders of the empire, the predecessors of Cyrus the Great, may have been laid to rest in a different manner, in hidden chambers sealed within unremarkable cliffs, their locations known only to a trusted few whose knowledge died with them. These would not be the boastful monuments of a global superpower, but the quiet, guarded sepulchres of a rising royal house, fearful of desecration by rival tribes. The likelihood of such lost sites is incredibly high. The Zagros range is vast and treacherous, with countless valleys that have never felt the tread of an archaeologist's boot. A tomb entrance could be concealed by a landslide, camouflaged by natural rock formations, or simply located in an area so remote that it has escaped all modern survey. Today, the search continues with 21st century tools. Archaeologists are scanning the mountains from orbit, using satellite imagery to detect subtle anomalies in the terrain, the straight lines and geometric shapes that nature rarely makes. They are flying drones equipped with sophisticated sensors over gorges that are impossible to reach on foot, looking for the faint signature of a hollow chamber behind a wall of solid stone. The potential reward for such a discovery is immeasurable. To find an intact, early Persian royal tomb would be like opening a time capsule from the empire's birth. Imagine uncovering the original regalia of a king before Cyrus, his weapons, his personal seals, and the artifacts that defined his court. Such a find would not just add a new name to a list, it would rewrite our understanding of the dynasty's origins, its artistic development, and its funerary rituals. It would give a face and a story to the shadowy figures who built the foundation upon which Cyrus the Great would stand. The Zagros Mountains hold their silence, but with every pass of a satellite, we come closer to listening in on a secret that has been kept for 2,500 years. A landlocked empire commanded the waves. The Persian mastery of the sea presents one of history's great contradictions. Here was a civilization born on the high, dry plateau of Iran, a culture of horsemen and arid mountain fortresses, yet it assembled and deployed one of the largest navies the ancient world had ever seen. This was not a native Persian fleet in the way their Immortals were a native Persian army. Its strength was borrowed, a colossal patchwork of maritime power drawn from their conquered coastal provinces. The Phoenicians, with their legendary shipbuilding skills, formed the core, their sleek, fast galleys cutting through the water. They were joined by the Egyptians, the Cypriots, and the Greeks from Ionia, each group bringing their own distinct ships, tactics, and centuries of seafaring tradition to the service of a king who likely never set foot on a ship himself. The logistical puzzle of this arrangement is staggering. How does an emperor in Susa, hundreds of miles from the nearest coast, effectively command 1,000 ships crewed by men whose languages he does not speak and whose loyalties are forever divided? The mystery deepens when we realize how little we know about the internal mechanics of this floating empire. The records are almost silent on the details of its administration. We have no Persian manual of naval tactics, no pay ledger for a Phoenician rower, no daily log from a fleet commander. The entire system seems to have operated in a historical blind spot. Recruitment itself must have been a monumental task. The empire did not press gang random farmers into service. They relied on a system of tribute, demanding that their maritime subjects provide a set number of ships and fully trained crews as part of their annual tax obligation. This was efficient, but it created an immediate and profound challenge of cohesion. Imagine a fleet preparing for the invasion of Greece. A Persian general, a land commander, holds ultimate authority, but the fleet is a collection of rival city-states and cultures. A Phoenician captain, proud of his heritage and his superior vessels, might deeply resent taking orders from an Egyptian admiral. The Ionian Greek sailors, whose own cousins lived in the very city-states Persia was attacking, were a constant security risk, their loyalty forever in question. How did the Persians prevent this multinational force from fracturing at the first sign of trouble? The answer likely lies in a brutal but effective calculus of reward and punishment. Loyal service was lavishly rewarded with silver, land grants, and trading privileges. A Phoenician city that provided 100 ships might be given control over lucrative trade routes, enriching itself through its submission. But disloyalty was met with swift and terrifying retribution. A rebellious sailor or a hesitant captain would not just face execution, his entire home city could be razed, its people enslaved as a warning to others. This created a system where it was simply more profitable and safer to serve the great king than to defy him. Yet, for all this centralized control, the day-to-day operation of the ships remained in the hands of the subject peoples. The Persians provided the grand strategy and the overwhelming resources, but the Phoenicians still designed the ships, the Egyptians still navigated by the stars, and the Cypriots still trained the rowers. This division of labor is why the Persian navy remains so elusive. Its true story is not one story, but 1,000 different stories in 12 different languages, recorded on papyrus and parchment that have long since turned to dust. The paradox of Persian naval power was that its greatest strength was also its deepest secret, a colossal force built by the sea for an empire that never truly called the sea its home. Above the earthly concerns of spies and navies, the Persian Empire looked to the stars. The Magi, the priestly class of the Medes and Persians, were the keepers of this celestial knowledge, renowned throughout the ancient world not just as fire tenders, but as master astronomers and astrologers. Their wisdom was so profound it directly shaped the science of Greece and Babylon, yet the full scope of their understanding is a secret that has been lost to the ages. We know they were more than mystics, they were meticulous observers of the heavens. They developed a sophisticated calendar, a complex system of months and days designed to align with the solar year, crucial for dictating the timing of religious festivals and royal ceremonies. But what specific celestial events were they tracking with such precision? Did they chart the predictable paths of planets, noting the wandering of Jupiter or the fiery glow of Mars? Could they predict eclipses, seeing the moon's shadow before it fell, and interpreting it as a divine omen? The few surviving references are maddeningly vague. Classical writers like Herodotus speak of their prowess but offer no technical manuals. The tools they used are another complete mystery. Did they rely on simple sighting rods and water clocks to measure the passage of the night? Or had they developed something more advanced, like an early astrolabe to map the positions of the stars? Their knowledge was inherently esoteric, passed down orally from master to apprentice within the closed circles of their priestly caste. This protected their authority, but it also made their wisdom incredibly fragile. When the empire fell to Alexander, the great libraries of cuneiform tablets might have been burned or scattered, but the true catastrophe was the silencing of the Magi's voices. Their most advanced teachings, the nuanced interpretations of planetary alignments, the detailed star catalogues, the very methods of their celestial calculations, died with them. The Greeks eagerly absorbed the basics, the names of constellations and the idea of astral influence, but the deep, accumulated data of centuries of Persian sky watching evaporated. We are left to wonder if they knew things about our universe that we would only rediscover thousands of years later. The final secret of the Persian Empire is written in ash. In the year 330 before the Common Era, the magnificent capital of Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the empire for nearly 2 centuries, was given to the flames. Alexander the Great had already captured the city and its legendary treasury months before, yet the great burning happened later during a prolonged stay. The question that has echoed down the millennia is not what happened, but why. Why would a conqueror who saw himself as the legitimate heir to the Persian throne destroy the very symbol of that power? The ancient historians provide starkly different answers, turning this single night into one of history's most contentious puzzles. The Roman historian Arrian presents it as a cold, calculated act of policy. He claims Alexander held a council of his companions where the Athenian orator Thais argued passionately for revenge. She reminded Alexander of the Persian burning of the Athenian Acropolis a century and a half earlier, framing the destruction of Persepolis as a just retribution for that ancient sacrilege and a clear signal to the world that the Achaemenid dynasty was irrevocably finished. In this version, the torch was a political tool, a deliberate and symbolic end to the old order. But then we have Plutarch, who tells a very different story. He describes a wild, drunken revel through the vast palace complex. Alexander and his companions, accompanied by women and fueled by wine, were carried away by the frenzy of the moment. It was Thais again who, in this account, seized a torch and, in a state of intoxication, urged the others to join her in an act of impulsive destruction. The fire spread quickly, engulfing the wooden ceilings and precious cedar beams, transforming a night of celebration into an irreversible catastrophe. In Plutarch's telling, it was not strategy but a tragic accident born of hubris and excess. So which story is true? Was it a sober act of statecraft or a drunken mistake? The evidence is lost to the fire itself. The political motivation is compelling. By burning Persepolis, Alexander could cement his support among the Greek cities who had long suffered under Persian dominance, presenting himself as their avenger. It was a powerful message that the war of conquest was also a war of cultural vengeance, permanently severing the loyalty of the Persian people from their old kings. Yet the psychological explanation is equally plausible. Alexander was a young man, overwhelmed by his own success and the sheer opulence of the Persian court. The pressure of his campaign and the heady influence of absolute power could have easily boiled over into a single, destructive night that he later regretted. The truth is, both stories might contain elements of reality. A calculated decision for revenge could have been set in motion during a drunken feast, the flames fanned by both alcohol and long-held grudges. The burning of Persepolis stands as a permanent question mark over Alexander's legacy and the final, violent transition from one empire to the next, a night where the line between brilliant strategy and reckless impulse was forever lost to the smoke. From the empty tomb of Cyrus to the phantom fleet and the silent language of linear Elamite, these 25 enigmas form a constellation of unanswered questions. They are not merely gaps in a history book, but living proof of the Persian Empire's profound complexity. We have walked alongside a vanished army of 50,000 men and stood before a cube-shaped building whose purpose died with its architects. We have tried to read a king's mind from a single vague inscription and wondered at the celestial knowledge lost when the last magi fell silent. Each mystery, from the lost royal treasure to the true identity of the false Smerdis, underscores a humbling truth. For all our advanced technology and scholarly dedication, this civilization still holds its deepest secrets close. The very scale of what we do not know is a testament to the empire's grandeur. These puzzles are what keep the empire alive, transforming it from a relic of the past into an ongoing conversation, a grand investigation that refuses to end. They remind us that history is not a closed case, but a story still being written with every new discovery and every fresh perspective. So we turn this final question over to you. Which of these 25 mysteries captures your imagination above all others? Does the fate of the Immortals haunt your thoughts, or are you drawn to the theological riddle of the bounteous spirit? What theories do you hold about the burning of Persepolis or the location of the king's lost fire temples? Share your ideas and your favorite enigmas in the comments below. Let us continue this exploration together, and if you want to join more journeys into the hidden corners of history, be sure to subscribe.